Welcome to a very special episode of the Thank You Notes podcast. My name is Travis McVeigh. I'm an anesthesiologist from Dallas, Texas, and I love Thank You Notes so much that I decided to make a podcast about them. I wanted to do a special episode because something happened to me that I'm going to try and use to shape the show from here on out, maybe into something better, something more accessible, something hopefully very successful. Successful in that I think my view of success is that a lot of people get something out of this show. I sent a cold email to Dr. Z-Dog, as you probably know him. He's a very, very popular social media doctor. He talks all about everything that you could think of when it comes to medicine. He talks about, nursing and how bad they have it. Talks about burnout, moral injury, you name it, he's covered it. He's been doing this for several years. And I just emailed him out of the blue and asked him for some advice. I said, hey, I've started this podcast. What would you recommend that I do? What do you do? And within 2 hours, he sends me a voicemail. He emailed me a recording of him talking about my podcast. And here you go.
Hey, Travis. This is Zubin.
He basically said, look, I love your podcast. I love your voice. I think you can be really, really good at this, but you need to make this something that people care about. Why are people tuning in? Why are they listening? And he goes into some things that he thinks I can improve. And I think I just need to get back to the core reason as to why I started this podcast. The core reason why I started this podcast is because I love thank you notes. And I had a lot of people from my life that I never truly good and thanked. And I wanted to thank them. I wanted to thank Ben Fu for teaching me how to play guitar. And I wanted to get back in touch with my high school teachers because they were so impactful on me. And the added bonus of all of this is that you, the listeners, get to hear what they're up to. Mark Malaby, if you look back at that episode, he left his post at my high school and went and got his PhD, and now he's helping people who've had a rough go of it get their high school diplomas. Not their GEDs, but their high school diplomas. Amanda Spitzer, whom I went to high school with, Amanda Spitzer Settle, I should say, is her full name now. She is helping people over the internet with IBS and people that can't eat certain foods or haven't been able to eat normally for their entire lives. She's working through it with them over the internet and has created a successful practice there in her home in Illinois now. So these people are doing really amazing things, and I don't think they're being thanked for it. Or if they are, it's not enough. And I want all of you to know about it. So that's why I'm doing this, because I love thank you notes, and I'm very thankful for these people that I know from my life. And, there's people out there doing really incredible things. Like Jacob Givens is just spreading his love of music, and he's doing it in a super positive way, in a super funny way, and I think that deserves to be thanked. So even if it's not somebody I know, I think they deserve a bit of gratitude, and that's kind of what I'm here for. So that's point number one. Point number two is that doctors kind of need it. If you talk to any of your friends that are doctors, or just talk to your primary care physician or whatever, and if you get them to open up, it's getting pretty difficult. We're fighting things on a lot of different fronts. We're fighting insurance companies. We're fighting private equity. And I'm not going to get political or complain about everything that's going on, but there are more demands on our time and wallets and everything, and it's just become increasingly more difficult to practice medicine. And I'm not asking for your pity or sympathy. I'm just saying that there are difficulties involved in what we do, and it gets rough, and it takes a toll on us. And I think we doctors should be propping each other up and saying, hey, I appreciate the work that you do. I appreciate the help that you do. And patients, even if they don't say it or can show it to you, I think they are grateful too. So I think that I want to highlight doctors like Dr. Schmidt, who are making us laugh, and you'll see him in an upcoming episode, and Dr. Donna Coriel, who's been helping physicians cultivate a social media presence and work that into sharing our love, sharing our passions with the general public. So that's the point number 2. The last point, and this is another something that Z-Dog said, is that we are going to start featuring some scientific papers, scientific research on actual gratitude, acts of service, counting your blessings, those kinds of things. I'm going to grab my notes for this. So in March 2019, there's a Brazilian study, a study out of Brazil. I'll include a link to the paper in the show notes, and it'll be readily accessible to you. But these people got a group of subjects to compile a positive and neutral events list for 14 days. So at the end of the day, they would get a prompt and they would just say, hey, write down some positive events of the day in one group, and then the other group just say, write down something that happened to you. And I'm not going to get into all the specifics of the paper. There's a lot of, statistics, et cetera, but they had people assess themselves at the beginning of the study and throughout and at the end of the study. And wouldn't you know it, people's happiness scores went up in both groups, not just the positive events, but also in the neutral events group. Everybody's scores went up. And their depression scores, the amount of depressive symptoms they were displaying at the end of the 14 days, the depression scores went down in both groups. The increase in happiness and the decrease in depression was greater in the positive events groups. But the take-home message that I want to give to all of you is that these acts of gratitude, these acts of self-reflection, can have actual tangible benefits for people. And I've experienced it myself. After I do an episode, for a few days, I get warm and fuzzy feelings. I feel better doing this. So I have selfish reasons for wanting to do this podcast because I get something out of it. I feel better when I do these episodes. So that is why I have decided I would like to invite everybody that listens to this podcast to write their own thank you notes. It doesn't have to be to me, just have it be to anybody. Send it, email it, DM it, however you want to get it to people. So I'm going to end this episode with a thank you note to Z-Dog, who didn't have to do any of that for me. And I want to start off, Dear Z-Dog, thank you for taking the time to listen to my podcast and give me solid, constructive feedback. Literally 2 hours after I cold emailed you. You are the OG physician on social media, and you couldn't be a better advocate and voice, not just for doctors, but nurses, med students, and anyone who works in healthcare. I'm taking your advice and encouragement to heart. You literally did this out of the kindness of your heart, and I thank you for it, Travis. So with that has been a special solo episode of the Thank You Notes podcast. A big shout out to Toy Sauce for providing the theme music. A big shout out to Z-Dog for being just an all-around great guy and sending me that feedback. And a big shout out to all of you for listening. Please like, rate, subscribe, and follow to the show anywhere you get it, on a podcast platform or TikTok or Instagram, whatever. You know what to do. It's 2023. Thank you for listening to this, and we'll see you next time.